The Rhode Island coast. From Aquidneck Island to Point Judith Light and the seashore of America's smallest state. A Revolution-era farm.
There are sites connected with the American Revolution all over this island, and this is a perfect example right here.
The birthplace of America's Industrial Revolution.
That entire industrial process began here at Slater Mill.
And a celebration in the capital city of Providence.
Waterfire is 100 bonfires which float mysteriously just above the surface.
Now, 50,000 kilometers of eastern coastline are revealed from above. An aerial journey over America's rugged Atlantic frontier. This is America Over the Edge. High above the United States eastern seaboard, the waters of the Atlantic Ocean line the horizon. This is Horseneck Beach, the southernmost point on the Massachusetts mainland. From here, nearly all of Rhode Island's coast can be seen. Rhode Island is the smallest state in the United States, but from the sky, kilometers of rugged shoreline reveal a wealth of beauty and history. Now, 2 kilometers to the west and closer to sea level, Quicksand Point marks a political boundary as the Massachusetts coast meets the Rhode Island state line. And further west, Sakonnet Point marks a geographic boundary as the Atlantic Ocean meets the Sakonnet River estuary and the historic Sakonnet Light. Sakonnet Light began construction in 1883 and was lit 1 year later. It's known as a spark plug lighthouse, based on its unique design. A cylindrical cast iron tower built above a concrete-filled caisson foundation. The tower rises 18 meters above sea level and features 4 stories of living space below. But in its early years, life at Sakonnet Light was not easy. Even on a calm summer day from just above the crashing waves, the eastern Rhode Island coast seems a world away. It's no wonder more than 50 lighthouse keepers served here in just over 50 years. In 1954, Sakonnet Light was badly damaged by those same crashing waves and put out of commission for more than 40 years. It was relit in 1997, restored, and today is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Beyond Sakonnet Light, the Sakonnet River estuary extends more than 20 kilometers inland. The waterway is part of Narragansett Bay, separating eastern Rhode Island from Aquidneck Island. And from the air, we gain a better understanding of how these islands got their name. Aquidneck Island was originally called Rhode Island, possibly for the red fall colors observed by Dutch settlers. The lands to the north were known as the Providence Plantations. Then, in 1644, the settlements merged, and Rhode Island became known as Aquidneck Island, from the native Narragansett language, meaning Isle of Peace. The wider merged colony would adopt the name Rhode Island, though it was mostly located on the mainland. Today, Aquidneck Island is home to an abundance of history and scenery, from universities and upscale private schools to the historic city of Newport and acres of farmland. And it was here during the American Revolution that British troops established a strong presence, a legacy that has been preserved at Prescott Farm.
Rhode Island was really on the front lines of the American Revolution. Since for a long time, Rhode Island merchants, particularly Newport merchants, had been antagonizing the Crown, after war is declared, 6,000 British troops come in and occupy this island.
And it was during this time that Rhode Islanders took control of their destiny, capturing the leader of those 6,000 troops.
There was a man, a local patriot commander by the name of Lieutenant Colonel William Barton. So he formulates this idea, gets a crew of about 48 volunteers from the 1st Rhode Island Regiment, and on the night of July 10th, 1777, they row over here from an area just south of Providence. And they arrive here at the island about midnight, and they find only one sentry on duty. They overpower him, they go in, and they capture General Prescott, as well as his aide-de-camp, a guy named Lieutenant Barrington, and they sort of abscond with them to the mainland before the alarm can even be sounded.
Today, the site of that effort has been preserved and is home to a variety of rare Revolution-era structures.
The property today is divided between a residential section on the north side of the creek and a museum section on the south side of the creek. One of the most interesting buildings that we have here at Prescott Farm is our 1812 windmill, which has a lot of miles on it. There were over 20 windmills all along this island during the height of the colonial period. On the first floor of the mill, you can see how this entire mechanism works. It is powered by the wind. Every rotation of the vanes covered with sailcloth outside are going to power this massive vertical shaft right here. And as that shaft turns, it in turn is going to move the gears on either side. We have a very unique windmill here in that we have 2 sets of grinding stones. We don't know of any other mills like that. And so as these gears turn, they are going to be powering the turning of the millstones up on the 2nd floor. And then this is also where the entire grinding process would finish up. As the finished meal is being ground, it comes down this chute right here, and then they could put a burlap bag on the end here and scoop up the finished meal ready to send home with the farmer and his family.
And outside the windmill, the traditions of Aquidneck Island's Revolution-era farms live on.
Another interesting feature here are our gardens. This is our kitchen garden here. What a lot of folks don't realize is that gardens in the colonial period were really a combination grocery store, drug store, also the place where you would get dyes for all of your cloth.
Prescott Farm's gardens are maintained by master gardeners from the University of Rhode Island. They depict what an Aquidneck Island garden might have looked like in 1750.
And so we have heritage variety plants here. What that means is that we've gotten seeds from plants that would have actually been grown on this island at that time. And there are no tomatoes in our gardens. Those would not have been grown until after the American Revolution. Instead, we have a lot of root vegetables, lots of varieties of potatoes, turnips, beets, lots of cabbage, and all these things that would have been such an important part of life on this island. And then in our herb garden, we have all of the things that would have been used by colonial housewives for medicines, for cloth dyeing, for culinary purposes. We really use these gardens here as a learning laboratory where we are blending modern organic gardening practices with the same fruits and vegetables that would have been grown by our ancestors.
For Elizabeth Spoden, the rich agricultural history of Rhode Island, along with stories of early America, make Prescott Farm a rare experience.
Prescott Farm is an amazing place to work. There's something really magical when you're here on a sort of misty morning and you see the windmill in the background, the ducks in the pond, and families coming here and exploring a part of the history of this island that they had no idea about prior to setting foot on this farm site.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required.
Ten kilometers northeast of Prescott Farm, the Mount Hope Suspension Bridge marks the northern end of Aquidneck Island. And from high above Narragansett Bay, nearly all of northern Rhode Island can be seen. Continuing northwest, Conimicut Lighthouse marks our approach to another Rhode Island waterway. Up until 1650, the Providence River was an important geographic boundary, separating the Dutch settlement of New Netherland from the colonies of New England. Today, it is an industrial waterway, and just north of Conimicut Lighthouse, Pomham Rocks Lighthouse marks the entrance to one of the Northeast's most important ports. The Port of Providence is the second largest port in New England. From above, we gain a unique perspective on its strategic location, built along deep, sheltered waters just inland from the Atlantic. And from the sky, we see how this multimodal facility operates. A mix of harbor cranes, wind turbines, and massive container ships. Each year, more than 3 million tons of cargo passes through this port, from scrap steel and used cars to petroleum, cement, and salt. In total, the Port of Providence generates more than $200 million each year for the region. And while that sounds like a lot, industry is no stranger to Rhode Island. Up the Seekonk River, the city of Pawtucket's history can be best experienced from a bird's eye view. Manufacturing sites stretch for kilometers, highlighting Pawtucket's reputation as an industrial hub, dating back to the late 18th century. One site has even been called America's first factory.
Slater Mill is traditionally known as the birthplace of America's Industrial Revolution. It was the first successful cotton spinning mill in the United States, opened in the year 1793.
Slater Mill was founded just as Pawtucket was flourishing, a growing hub surrounded by rural farmland.
At the time Slater Mill was open, Rhode Island was still preeminently agricultural, an area of plantations to the south, smaller farms to the north. Pawtucket, prior to the development of the Industrial Revolution, had been both a tanning center and a shipbuilding center.
The idea for a mill was proposed by investors William Alamy and Moses Brown. They teamed up with English mill manager Samuel Slater and brought industry to America. The Slater Mill opened in 1793.
Here at Slater Mill, the primary operation was the machine-based spinning of fiber into thread. If you will, it's the beginning of the textile industry in the United States.
Inside these historic buildings, America's first factory has been preserved.
Once the cotton arrived at the factory, it would have been broken or softened on a machine like this. The softened cotton would then had to have been straightened for industrial processing. Prior to the Industrial Revolution, the straightening would have been done by hand with a couple of paddles that were called carding paddles, whereby the cotton would have literally been brushed straight. That was not appropriate for industrial production, so Mr. Slater and his technical advisor, Mr. Slater Brown, developed this, the mechanical carding machine, whereby the cotton fibers were straightened by machine, increasing the output. The straightened cotton was then taken to a drawing frame. The cotton would have been rendered into a shape like this, which was known as a cotton sliver. The sliver, of course, is inappropriate for sewing because it has no strength, so they would have kept processing. The sliver would have been brought to a machine like this. The sliver would have been inserted, the rollers would have processed it down here into this, which is called roved cotton. While it does look like thread, it certainly isn't. It has no strength. The key to providing strength is to spin the cotton, which will give you a great deal of strength in the fiber so that you can use it to sew.
But one of the main obstacles the Slater Mill faced was how to spin a large quantity of cotton quickly. The answer was found in Slater Mill's spinning frame.
And eventually we come to this machine. This is the throstle spinning frame. It occupies a central position here at Slater Mill because this is the kind of spinning frame that would have been here in Mr. Slater's day. We'd put the machine on, the dowels would spin, the roved cotton would come off and be spun into usable thread. And to show that it is the spinning that is the key element, up here you would have found nothing but roved cotton. It would be subject to the spinning process, and then down here would be yielded your cell product, your spun thread. And the proof of that is I can take my cotton, which used to be simple roving, has now been spun into thread, and I can pull at it, I can snap at it, I can yank at it. This is the thread that will become the cell product. This spun machine-produced thread is the basis of the American textile revolution.
But the working level floors are not all there is to see at the Slater Mill Museum. In the Wilkinson Mill next door, the liquid power source for these machines is demonstrated.
Okay, so we're in the basement of the Wilkinson Mill, and this is the power for these machines. This is where the power is coming from. It's coming from this big water wheel right here.
Outside the building, Jay Brunel releases the water that will turn the massive water wheel.
I'm gonna get the water wheel going, and how that happens, these pins that are in these holes right here, I'm gonna press down and it's gonna pull up this board. Now this board is attached to a wider board underneath that's in the grooves. And when I press down on this, this comes up and pulls that board up, and that's how the water gets into the water buckets.
Back inside, the water wheel begins to spin.
There she goes. All right, we got the water wheel working with the water going in the buckets, filling it up, spinning around, getting the power going from the bevel gears here, to the shaft up there, which up there there's more bevel gears that run the shaft all the way down the building. So this is your power from the river to this, the moving water.
For Alan McGilvery and Jay Brunel, the history that lives on at Slater Mill preserves a key moment in the history of Pawtucket and Rhode Island.
This has a lot of meaning to me here, working here at the mills. My father, he was a loom mechanic, would fix looms and stuff, and worked his whole life doing that.
The most exciting thing about being here at Slater Mill, seeing these machines, is the knowledge that you are actually standing in the place where the American Industrial Revolution truly happened. It was here, on this floor, that Mr. Slater taught the elements of water-powered, machine-driven production, which became the basis of the American Industrial Revolution, not just in the textile industry, but in virtually every other industry as well. And that entire industrial process began here at Slater Mill, where we get to stand on a daily basis.
"10 kilometers south of Pawtucket, the skyline of Rhode Island's capital city appears on the horizon. Providence was founded in 1636 by clergyman Roger Williams, who was fleeing religious persecution to the north. Williams named his new settlement the Providence Plantations, in thanks to God for his safe exile. Today, Roger Williams is known as the founder of Rhode Island, and the city is considered the heart of religious freedom in America. From the air, signs of that legacy are revealed, starting with the city's State House. It is a white marble masterpiece built between 1895 and 1904. Inside the dome is a 1663 colonial charter from King Charles II, guaranteeing religious freedom in the colony. And atop the State House, another Rhode Island symbol can be clearly seen. It is the state's Independence Man, representing the freedom of thought and action. Not far away, the city's former Industrial Trust building rises 26 stories. It has also become an iconic landmark, known as the Superman Building, for its resemblance to the Daily Planet building located in Superman's fictional city of Metropolis. Today, Providence is one of the most popular stops on the East Coast, growing in reputation for its restaurants and nightlife. It is also home to one of America's great nighttime celebrations, a festival residents know as Waterfire.
Waterfire is a lot of things. It's an art festival, it's a gathering together, it's an architectural intervention, it's a ritual, it's a music festival, drama festival. It's got all sorts of things. But right at its heart is 100 bonfires which float mysteriously just above the surface of 3 rivers at the heart of downtown Providence.
Barnaby Evans' vision of a fire show in Providence goes back decades and carries a strong connection to the legacy of the city.
This is an idea I had 20 years ago when the city of Providence was struggling to change its brand, its feeling, and I wanted to make something that was just really exciting, that would attract people here and would celebrate what I loved about the city, which is its historic architecture, the fantastic food, the diversity of its residents, and a tradition of engagement and freedom of speech that started all the way back when Providence was founded by Roger Williams. We started off in 1994 with a dozen fires, and we very rapidly grew to 100 fires, and the public demand has had us continuing. We do about 15 events a year, every year for 20 years. It's free, it's in the street, and I think you'll find it quite a fascinating experience.
And today, as residents get ready for Waterfire, crowds begin to gather.
You're seeing people arrive. We just had someone walk by from New Jersey. I talked earlier to 4 people that came by from India. People travel to see this event. They settle into the city. They enjoy the great restaurants, and pretty soon they'll start to gather around the river here as we get closer and closer to sunset, when there's this transformation that happens when we switch to illuminating the city of Providence by firelight.
Waterfire has become an event embraced by the city, and hundreds of volunteers have been working tirelessly in preparation.
We have a staff of 20, but then we have about 300 volunteers tonight who will be doing all sorts of things. And one of the point of the pieces is that we make our cities vital and alive when people come together and help.
And down in the river, they are nearly ready.
So this is a brazier. A brazier is one of the floating fire pits. There's 86 different braziers all along Waterfire. It takes anywhere from 20 to about 40 different volunteers from all parts of the community to come out and help us create 86 of these every single full fire.
Now, Gary Saint Laurent and his team tackles the last brazier of the day. They begin piling newspaper and a bamboo pole inside, and then wood to burn through the night.
This is about 3 hours of work in the morning. We start at 8 a.m. and we're not done until about noon. So there's 7 boats in total. Each one of them will get about 15 different braziers to build. Anywhere from 3 to 5 people will join a captain on the boat to just construct each one of these braziers. As much wood as that we can get in there means the less feeds that we have to do later on.
Now Waterfire is ready to begin.
And the important part to remember about doing this brazier is that you want to keep the wick nice and high, so that way the lighter can come in and light it. Let's do a check around, make sure everything's filled. And I think we are good.
And the crowds are ready as well. The show begins as a procession of torches lights the water on fire, creating a circle of light in the central pool. Waterfire fans line the kilometer-long course and watch as a flotilla of barges processes, carrying more fire and a special surprise.
We've got fire dancers. We've got some featured on boats, some featured on the piers and the bridge.
Residents of Providence and visitors alike are impressed once again. It is a spectacular sight, from the water or from above. Years after his vision became reality, Barnaby Evans says this spectacle continues to inspire.
I find Providence to be an incredibly special place. This is actually where the heart of the American dream was started. Roger Williams set up and founded the city on the principle of free speech, equality of all, and separation of church and state. And those three ideas came on to be the core bedrock principle of the United States. And it all started here in Providence in 1636. It's a tremendous thing to be proud of. And as a consequence, there's a culture that values free thinking, experiment, thought, innovation. You see it here on every block, and I think you'll find a lot to be excited about in Providence.
30 kilometers south of Providence, we soar above the western edge of Narragansett Bay and enjoy a rare opportunity to truly appreciate Rhode Island's great feats of engineering. The Jamestown Verrazano Bridge is a concrete box girder-style structure connecting the western shore of Narragansett Bay with Connecticut Island. From Connecticut Island back to Aquidneck Island, the Clarence Pell Newport Bridge rises 120 meters. Completed in 1969, the Newport Bridge is 3 kilometers long and considered one of the most formidable projects of its time. Before construction even began, 838 steel pilings were driven deep underwater. Then, dive teams, living underwater for a week at a time, severed the tops of the pilings with torches. Finally, the piers themselves were delivered by barge, weighing as much as 400 tons. In total, the Newport Bridge's 54 piers, foundations, and anchorages contain more than 65,000 cubic meters of concrete. The Newport Bridge is the longest suspension bridge in New England and one of Rhode Island's most iconic images. Far below the Newport Bridge, another symbol of America's smallest state rises 11 meters above water. Rose Island Light, located on Rose Island, was completed in 1870. It served as a beacon to mariners for nearly a century, until it was decommissioned in 1970. But like Sakonnet Light, advocates here fought to have the light added to the National Register of Historic Places. Rhode Island Light was relit in 1992, and today supporters can visit this historic island or even spend a week as an honorary lighthouse keeper. And just east of the light, the diverse beauty of Newport, Rhode Island is clear to see. From the sky, the city's sheltered location on the western end of Aquidneck Island can truly be appreciated, as well as its many historic and cultural features. Newport is home to a world-famous harbor and one of the most formidable sailing fleets on the East Coast. It also holds a military legacy. Fort Adams, lining the mouth of Newport Harbor, dates back to 1799 and is named after the second President of the United States, John Adams. But Newport may be best known for an elaborate collection of homes known as the Newport Mansions, located on the southern edge of Aquidneck Island. From the Marble House to Chateau-sur-Mer, each mansion boasts a style all its own. A collection highlighted by the Vanderbilt family's summer cottage, known as the Breakers, completed in 1895. And while these Newport mansions can be seen from the ground along the city's famous cliff walk, nothing compares to seeing them from the sky.
We're at Rough Point, and Rough Point is located at the southern end of what's called Bellevue Avenue, which is where all of the great mansions of the Gilded Age are located in Newport. It's an amazing phenomenon that there were so many big mansions built here, mostly by the wealthy people of New York. From about 1890 through about 1910, they were really building some of the largest private vacation homes anywhere in the United States.
Like the Breakers, Rough Point was built by the Vanderbilt family, wealthy industrialists who owned the New York Central Railway. But they didn't own Rough Point forever. In the early 20th century, the mansion was purchased by the Duke family.
Frederick Vanderbilt didn't own the house very long. It passed through another owner after the Vanderbilts owned it, and then it was rented and finally purchased by the Duke family. Buck Duke was a major tobacco baron, but ultimately ended up founding Duke Power, which is today Duke Energy, and it was he who gave all of the money to Trinity College, and it was renamed as Duke University. The house finally ended up with his daughter, Doris Duke, when he passed away in 1925. And Doris continued to own the house up until her own death, which was in 1993.
Rough Point sits on 10 acres of prime waterfront. Its grounds were designed by Frederick Olmsted, creator of New York's Central Park. Inside the house, the legacy of Doris Duke lives on. She decreed this Newport mansion be maintained and kept open for the public to enjoy.
So welcome to Rough Point, which was the summer home of the American socialite and philanthropist Doris Duke. It was built in an English manorial style, ironically not by the Duke family, but by one of the younger brothers of the Vanderbilt family, who also built Marble House and the Breakers here in town. So we can head right on in and see the incredible art collection that she and her father left still in this building.
Just inside the residence, on Rough Point's main floor, the first stop is the Yellow Room.
So here's one of the more popular rooms in the house here at Rough Point. It has a very creative name. It's known as the Yellow Room. I'm sure you can all guess why. Part of the reason why it is so popular is it feels like you're walking into a Jane Austen novel. So this is a very Regency-style era room. So that was the era after George III, when his son, George IV, first came onto the throne. He was known as the Regent of England. And so that's when all those Jane Austen novels that are very popular were first being created. And so anyone who watches period-style dramas really enjoys walking in here because it feels like you're walking into a room where you might meet Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice.
And upstairs, the more personal side of Doris Duke is revealed.
So here we are in Doris Duke's bedroom here at Rough Point. This one has one of the more royalistic feelings of the rest of the house. We're told generally Rough Point feels very homey, like someone's actual house, and that's because it was lived in. This room is actually filled with pieces made for royalty. This is also probably the largest amount of mother-of-pearl furniture anyone will see in one place in their entire lifetime. All of this was made in the 1800s for Spanish royalty in Austria. Doris was very much into eclectic mixing and matching when it came to her art collecting. So for example, the furniture in here for the most part is Austrian, all these mother-of-pearl pieces. And we also have a French painting above the fireplace. You may recognize the artist's name. That's an Auguste Renoir from 1875.
Finally, the Great Hall may be Rough Point's top attraction, with an art collection boasting priceless paintings and incredible Ming Dynasty vases dating back to the 1500s.
So finally, we're heading into the Great Hall, which is one of the showstopper pieces of Rough Point. What's funny about it is that, it's very large and cathedral feeling right now. The ceiling's about 26 feet high. Originally, it was almost twice that. It was about 15 feet higher up than it is right now, so it would have felt even loftier back in the day. But the Dukes really wanted to get a sort of gallery space into this house. Doris and her father thought of artwork as an investment for the future. It was both a way to conserve history, but also to ensure that you'd always have something to leave your mark on the world by having an incredible art collection. So we have two paintings by a famed artist from England from the early 1700s named Sir Thomas Gainsborough. We have a portrait of two gentlemen by an artist named Anthony Van Dyck, who operated about 100 years before then, as well as a portrait of Charles I, King of England at one time, and his French Queen Henrietta Maria.
For the modern caretakers of Doris Duke's mansion, Rough Point is a window into another age, a residence worth sharing with the world.
I'm a historian, so for me, Newport's just a remarkable place, and I think it should be for everybody, whether they care about history or not, because Newport has so much going on. It's such a charming place, and all of that historic architecture, all of that American heritage and history just crowds in here, and you can't walk down the streets without feeling that heritage just dripping from every place. If you want to see America throughout the ages, Newport's a great place to do it.
"20 kilometers southwest of Rough Point, Point Judith marks our final stretch of Rhode Island coast. And here, from high above Point Judith Light, the entire western shoreline of Rhode Island can be seen. Far below, East Matunic State Beach marks the first of Rhode Island's Atlantic beaches. A popular spot for swimmers and kite surfers. And East Matunic State Beach leads to more beaches, marshlands, and more coastal residences. Some small communities hugging coastal roads, others isolated homes that lie secluded on vast stretches of beachfront. Finally, just inland, the Rhode Island town of Westerly lies on the banks of the Pawcatuck River. The Pawcatuck River stretches just 55 kilometers, but has marked the western boundary of Rhode Island since 1636. Today, it separates Rhode Island from Connecticut and slowly winds its way to Napatree Point, the westernmost point in Rhode Island. From the Massachusetts state line and the historic Sakonnet Light, to the inland waters of the Providence River and Rhode Island's capital city. To the western banks of Narragansett Bay and pristine beaches lining the waters of the Atlantic. America's smallest state is home to a vast, diverse coastline. From above, Rhode Island's feats of engineering come alive. Its industrial past is enshrined forever. And its modern-day cultural celebrations carry America's symbols of freedom well into the future. Here, on the edge of America.